this is the switch that has to happen. And this mess with the schools is waking up a lot of Dems to the fact that, look, this should not be as ideological as it is. I mean, one thing that Bill Maher just put out that you just sent me was that Democrats dramatically overestimate the chances of COVID putting you in the hospital.
And it's not like, the actual number is 1% to 5%, right?
Yeah.
Some of that. But it's not like we think 20% of the people are dying. They think like 50+% of people are dying. And 70% of the party thinks it's over 20% of people are dying.
Yeah. So this to me has to be the message that these moms are finding out.
Yeah.
Is that the Democrats imagine that they're the party of facts and science, and then the Republicans are troglodytes and ignorant and the rest of it.
Yep.
But then when you start digging, it turns out that the Democrats are actually tribal and ideological in the same way as anyone else, and that's not a knock. It's just everyone's somewhat tribal. But then if someone like this mom in Cleveland raise her hand and be like, "Hey, I'm a member of the tribe," and these facts aren't lining up, then they'll just get hammered down. Instead of because then they'll be like, "Hey, it turns out you're not on our team" or whatnot.
Yes.
And there are all these people embedded within the Democratic Party who actually have similar points of view who fear the hammering down. Yes. They know if they say these things, and that's what we're going to get to now, which is your experience as someone who is something of a convert to the Democratic Party, that there's a sense that some people's experiences are more valid than others. If you are, let's say, in your case, like a straight white dude, or in this author's case, like a white mom, then you're not allowed to criticize or talk. And that if you do, then you're going to be personally attacked.
It's a really deep point, and it's this. She's talking about where do you go, right? And the challenge is on the presidential level, which a lot of us, we hold a president, it's a different election, right? We hold them as like almost godlike, essentially, in terms of our leaders and who we look up to and blame things on. And that's there's a lot of research on that too. It's a combination of whether it's virtue signaling or the right mouthpiece in terms of who can say what and what can be said. And I'm curious your thoughts on this, because my hesitation of ever getting into politics is that I'm socially aligned with the Democrats. I think the Democrats generally have the right policies on a lot of things. Some things on the Republican side, I think, I like capitalism more than I do socialism or other things. But I've hesitated because I don't think the Democratic Party loves straight white men. And even when I was talking to you about running, before I met you when we first started, I was like, how do you beat Donald Trump? I was thinking it had to be an outsider, it had to be someone who was young. I thought they had to be male because I thought they had to have the balance to the Trump male energy. But I also thought they had to be diverse coming from the Democratic Party to get through that primary. You've talked about this a bit with John McWhorter, but why are Democrats, we're obsessed with identity. I have some thoughts on it too, but we care a lot about the messenger over the message at times. You lived that, I think, both the pros and cons of that.
John described it in his book Woke Racism, which you should check out. You should check out my convo with John if you haven't seen it. He says that there's a certain subset of the Democratic Party that is obsessed with the power differential. So the power differential typically is framed as white-black, or whites have the power, blacks do not. And so whites need to try and address this through various behaviors that John argues don't actually address the fundamental problems that people care about. It's just, sort of a strange behavioral layer. But the other power differentials that people are concerned about are male, female, straight.
Part of the LGBTQ community, right?
Yes. And so taking a figure like you, you are all of the quote unquote positives in the power differentials because you're a straight white male. Right. Also, in your case, you have the sins of being tall, handsome.
Yeah, I'm the devil incarnate.
The rest of it. So if you frame everything in power differential, then it's like, well, someone like you, then any success you achieve is because you are who you are, and it had nothing to do with your actions, character, work ethic. It's just, you just fell out of bed. And are super successful. And the Asian guy occupies a nebulous place in this framework. Because if you look at Andrew Yang, you think, okay, straight male, Asian, and then you're like, where are Asians in the power differential?
Right.
And the answer is, it is whatever is convenient to you.
They called you the convenient minority behind the scenes. But now we're putting it in front of the scenes if we can. But the Asians are known as a convenient minority in Democratic politics. So they're not a minority when they want some message, and they are people of color when it's politically convenient.
Yeah, so I was interested, obviously, as a candidate, how it would be received. And I think that it turns out that that the quote unquote benefits of being a minority did not include me. Like there wasn't this like, oh, like, you know, look what this person must have overcome as a son of immigrants. Like that stuff all went out the window, which I'm more or less cool with. And I think a lot of it too is the persona I have, which is I'm not someone who is going to be leading with like, look at all the shit I've overcome kind of stuff. Yeah. Like that's not my jam. I'm more like, okay, let's get shit done. You know, let's operate. And one of the major reasons why I wouldn't fall into the negative side of this power differential, or the like less powerful side, is because the perception was like, well, he's a business guy, he's a tech bro, he's a this or that. But to your point in the presidential primary, we've discussed this, there were half a dozen or more straight white men who ran that never got the time of day in the presidential race. Correct. Many of whom we spoke with personally, you and I, and we liked and thought well of and thought would make fine presidents. One guy who completely got short shrift, Joe Sestak, great guy. Press completely ignored him. People watching this right now are like, who? You can look up Joe Sestak. Michael Bennett, great guy. John Hickenlooper, great guy.
The one I thought that actually had the full package was John Hickenlooper, where that he was an entrepreneur. He started what's the Goose Island beer, whatever the beer company is. Ran it himself and then became governor. Like has business, political experience, and actually is like there were some, and I'm going to leave them nameless. It's not fair, but there were plenty of. Where I'm at, like the world doesn't, we're not clamoring for more straight white dudes in politics. Like we have that voice, we have that perspective, right? That's not the problem.
Well, this to me is one of the dangers.
Go ahead.
Is that if you look at the straight white dudes in politics, the media organizations on the Democratic side do not want to elevate this set of figures.
Yes.
They will accept like the folks who are already kind of, you know, emblazoned in the public consciousness, like a Bernie or a Joe.
Right. But why is that, you think? Is it because of representation?
Yeah. There's a fixation. There's a fixation on trying to address the power differential. And wouldn't it be great if we got the first X of Y? Right. Now, there are a lot of Americans who are kind of impatient with the first X of Y thing because it doesn't matter as much as we thought or hoped or whatever the hell.
Right.
You know, there were some people that thought Barack Obama, President of the United States, means we're not racist anymore. We're post-racial, which, by the way, we're probably more racist now than we were.
It backfired a bit.
People were making the same argument about Hillary. It's like, hey, first woman president. We like show that we would be over it. And then, I don't think that would have fixed it.
Right.
Like that. Imagining
systemic problems, right?
Imagining that having an elected representative of a certain identity, and by the way, like I'm for people of different backgrounds being in like different seats. I mean, I think it's great. Same. But making that like the criteria, the criterion that you're using primarily is not great. And correct. A lot of Americans can sense that the media in particular has gone overboard with this. And one of the byproducts of this is that it has the potential to divide the country further, where you have, and I'm going to use you as the proxy, you have like reasonable, well-intended white people, men and women, who are generally aligned with the Democratic Party on some things, but feel driven out because there's this implicit, like, we don't care about you and your perspective because you are the powerful in the power differential equation, and all we're going to do is talk to people who are from an historically marginalized group.
Because I live this both personally and through you, right, on this campaign. But also, I want to share this with everybody. Like, we live this actually with each other. I don't know if you remember this story. It was really early on. I just started on the campaign, and we'd go into like our first couple meetings, and I'd make these little one-off comments I didn't even realize I was making. I would be like, we'd talk about your campaign, or I'd talk about the campaign and be like, well, that's if we do okay, or that's before we get a real campaign manager, or we get a real XYZ, or I'd like kind of caveat what we were doing. And you got really mad. And in my opinion, justifiably so. You're like, stop second guessing this, caveating. Like, we got to go in guns blazing. We are confident. We're setting the world on fire. This is a vision. We have to get people on board. We can't give them show the cracks in our faith in this, because we don't believe. How are they going to believe? Which is logical. And then it got to a point where I was really like proactively working on it, and I was still fucking it up. Like, you would notice it, make you more mad. You're like, I've asked you 6 times to do this. And I remember I sat you down, probably like it took me a while to figure out. I'm like, dude, here's the deal. My whole life, I naturally come at it trying to be as humble as humanly possible when I go to a meeting, because I come off as a fucking asshole.
You know, look at this cocky douche.
Look at this shithead. Who's
where'd he go, Duke?
Straight white man. Yeah, must have gone to Duke. Fuck that, but that's right. And so but then you told me like, and I was like, I think for you, watching you, like, and this is fucked up too, but like, as an Asian guy, people think you're timid or shy or not sure of yourself and gonna stand there quietly and let people walk over you, which is a bullshit stereotype. So you go the opposite. You're like, bang, extreme. And if you say the same thing that I would say, it comes off 10 times different. And I've learned that the hard way, because one time in Ohio, I gave your stump speech at like a Democratic event, like the basically word for word stump. Awful. Crashed and burned. Could not do it. The opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian guy who likes math. Doesn't sound as cool. It sounds a little offensive coming from me. It did not go well. Identity matters. I'm not, there's systems around us that are creating those perceptions and realities. Did you feel the need to be more confident in yourself and your vision because you were Asian? Or was that something you had growing up too? Or something you felt more in politics? I mean, thoughts on that piece?
Well, certainly on the campaign front, people I knew were going to take their cues from us. And so if I come in and people are like, oh, he's not serious, then they're not going to tell their friends, because they're like, oh, this isn't going to go anywhere. In terms of my upbringing and the rest of it, I was one of the only Asian kids in my public school. And so I felt like my masculinity was in question all the time. I'd also skipped a grade, so that made it
shorter.
I was like scrawnier and shorter, and like the rest of it. I had a chip on my shoulder. I got in a lot of fights as a kid. And so then when I lost most of them. And then when I got to like age 17, I started going to the gym.
Yeah.
And so I became like an angry weightlifting Asian guy who drank protein shakes and the rest of it. Yeah, you know those guys.
Yeah.
If you went
spot
to the
me, bro.
Yeah, spot you, bro. And if you went to the
I actually liked them. They played basketball mostly too.
Yes.
Okay.
I did that. And so was that in some ways a response to challenges to my masculinity growing up? 100%.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenon that a lot of Asian guys are familiar with, or if you go to the gym, you see the Asian dudes where they're pumping iron.
I mean, and we could do a whole episode of this. I'm very, very passionate about manhood and understanding. I think some of the biggest problems in our society are caused by weak men, insecure men. Like, if you want to help women, like helping men be less shitty is a really good place to start, frankly, because what men go through as kids is like, and how they define their masculinity is a big part of that. Right? I did musicals, right? So I had to do sports to balance that out, because I like to sing. I like to play saxophone.
You better do some sports then, bro.
I had to, right? And then I didn't fit in either, right? So I've never said this out loud, but I'm curious. It's like, if there's a acceptance in the Democratic Party that the straight white male is the root of all evil and power, like that's the bastion of...
there's a subset of the Democratic Party that would agree with that statement.
Right. That's the problem, right? I don't know if vilifying all of them is the right strategy.
I'm going to say it's the wrong strategy.
Right?